Chapter 27. Between Here and There. The acid had burned deep into Scythe Constantine's face, too deep for his own healing nanites to repair on their own, but not so serious that he couldn't be mended at a wellness center. "You'll be with us for at least 2 days, the nurse told him shortly after he arrived, his eyes and half his face beneath bandages. He tried to imagine what she looked like, but decided it was a pointless endeavor and too exhausting, considering all the painkillers coursing through his blood. The densely packed legion of advanced healing nanites being fed into his bloodstream now didn't help his thought processes either. They probably outnumbered his red blood cells at this point, which meant there was less blood being carried to his brain as they did their work. He imagined his blood was as viscous as mercury now. "How long until I get my sight back?" he asked. The nurse was non-committal. "The nanites are still cataloging the damage. We'll have an assessment by morning. But keep in mind, they're going to have to reconstruct your eyes from scratch. It's a tall order. I imagine it will be at least another 24 hours. He sighed, wondering why it was called speed healing if there was nothing speedy about it at all. Reports from his subordinates tallied Tate and Saboris gleamed at the theater. "We're asking for a special dispensation from the High Blade to temporarily revive them for questioning," Scythe Armstrong informed him. "Which," Constantine pointed out, "has the added benefit of allowing us to glean them a second time." The fact that his team had thwarted the attack and taken down most of the conspirators was tempered by the knowledge that Grayson Tolliver had gotten away. The odd thing was, not a single public record they were able to dig out of the Thunderhead's backbrain placed him there. In fact, no record placed him anywhere. Somehow, he had been erased from existence. In his place was a doppelganger named Slade Bridger with a truly sordid history. How Tolliver had managed not only to reimagine himself, but to override his own digital footprint was a mystery worthy of closer scrutiny. Without a fire suppression system, the theater itself had burned to the ground, but not before everyone escaped. The only casualties of the evening were then Saboris Clint and the guard who had hurled himself at Tolliver. He had been hit by the full force of the acid, leaving little left of him. Certainly too little to be revived, but his sacrifice had saved Scythe's anesthesia. As the man was part of Scythe Constantine's private interrogation team, it made the loss personal. Someone would most certainly pay. Although normal citizens were always put into an induced coma during the speed healing process, Constantine demanded he be kept conscious, and as he was a Scythe, they had to give in to his wishes. He needed to think, brood, plan, and he remained aware of the passage of time. He despised the idea of losing entire days to the healing process in an unconscious state. Scythe Anastasia visited him shortly before he was due to regain his sight. He was in no mood for a visit from her, but he would not begrudge her the opportunity to thank him for his profound sacrifice on her behalf. "I assure you, Anastasia, that I will personally interrogate them Saboris we captured before we reclaim them, and we will apprehend Grayson Tolliver," he told her, trying his best to enunciate and not allow the painkillers to slur his words. "He will pay for his actions in every way allowable under Scythe law." "Still, he saved everyone in the theater by breaking that pipe," Anastasia reminded him. "Yes," Constantine reluctantly admitted, "but there is something seriously wrong when your saber is also your attacker." She had no response to that but silence. "4 of the assailants we caught were from the Styx's region," Constantine informed her. "So, you think it was masterminded by someone from there?" "Or someone hiding there," Constantine said. "We'll get to the bottom of it." Which was what he always said, because in the past he always had. It frustrated him that this might be the first exception. "Conclave is coming up," Anastasia said. "Do you think you'll be able to attend?" He couldn't tell which she was hoping for, his absence or his attendance. "I will be there," he told her, "even if they have to replace my blood with antifreeze to make it happen." She left, and after she was gone, it occurred to Constantine that not once during their conversation did she thank him. An hour later, a mysterious note arrived while Saitra and Marie had lunch in the restaurant of their hotel. It was the first time in quite a while that they had taken a meal in public. The note came as a surprise to both of them. Saithkuri reached for it, but the bullhop who had brought it apologized and told them that it was addressed to Saith Anastasia. He handed it to Saitra, who opened it and read it quickly. "Well, out with it," Marie said. "Who's it from, and what do they want?" "It's nothing," she told Saithkuri, slipping the note into one of the pockets of her robe. "It's just the family of the man I gleaned last night. They want to know when I'll be giving them immunity." "I thought they were coming here this evening." "They are, but weren't sure of the exact time. The note says they'll be here at 5, unless that's a problem." "Whatever works for you," Saithkuri said. "After all, it's your ring they'll be kissing, not mine." Then she returned her attention to her salmon. Half an hour later, Saitra was outside in street clothes, hurrying across the city. The note had not been from the actor's family. It was from Rowan. It had been scrawled in haste and said, "Need your help, Transportation Museum. ASAP." It had been all she could do not to abandon Saithkuri mid-meal. But Saitra knew living like that would have made Marie suspicious. She had hidden a set of street clothes in a pocket of her suitcase, just in case she needed to go out incognito. The problem was, she had no coat. It would be too bulky to hide from Marie. So without the thermal coils of her winter robe, she was freezing the instant she slipped outside. After braving the cold for 2 blocks, she had to put on her ring and show it to a shopkeeper to get herself a coat. He gave her the one she wanted at no charge. "Immunity would ensure that I don't mention you were out in public without your robe," the shopkeeper suggested. Saita didn't appreciate the man's attempt at blackmail, so she said, "How about I just agree not to glean you for making that threat?" Clearly, the thought had not occurred to him. He stammered for a moment. Yes, of course, that's fair, that's fair." Then he fumbled with some other accessories. "Gloves to go with your coat?" She accepted them and went out into the wind-swept day. Her heart had leapt when she first read the note, but she had not let Marie see her excitement, her concern. So Roman was here, and he needed her help? Why? Was he in danger, or did he want her to join him in his mission of ending unworthy sights? Would she do it if he asked? Definitely not. Probably not. Maybe not. Of course, this could also be some sort of trap. Whoever was behind last night's attack was most certainly licking their wounds, so the chances that this was another attack were slim. Still, she brought enough concealed weapons to defend herself if necessary. The Great Plains Transportation Museum was an open-air repository of engines and rolling stock from every era of rail transportation. They even boasted a car from the first maglev train, hovering eternally in the Bury Center. Apparently, Wichita was once a major crossroad between here and there. Now, it was just like any other city. There was a homogeneity to Mid-America that was both comforting and annoying. At this time of year, there were only scant groups of tourists at the museum, who, for some reason, chose Wichita as a holiday destination. As it was maintained by the Thunderhead, admission was free. A good thing, too. Saitra didn't want to have to show her ring again just to get in. It was one thing to get a coat from a shopkeeper, it was quite another to blow her cover in the very place she was about to have a secret meeting. With her coat pulled tight against the wind, she wandered between black steam engines and red diesels, searching every corner of the train yard for Roman. After a while, she began to worry that this was a trick after all, maybe to separate her from Saithkuri. She was turning to leave when someone called to her. "I'm over here." She followed the voice to a narrow, shady space between 2 boxcars, where the icy wind whistled as it forced its way through. With the wind in her face, she couldn't see him clearly until she got close. "Saith Anastasia, I was afraid you wouldn't come." This wasn't Rowan. It was Grison told her. "You? Disappointment didn't begin to describe what she felt. I should clean you right here and bring your heart to Constantine. He'd probably eat it. Probably, Citra had to admit. She hated Grison in this moment, hated him because of who he was not. It was as if the universe itself had betrayed her, and she was nowhere near ready to forgive it. She should have realized that the handwriting on the note wasn't Rowan's, but as much as she wanted to take out her frustration on Tolliver, she couldn't. It wasn't his fault that he wasn't Rowan, and, as she had pointed out to Constantine, Grison had saved her life twice. I need your help, he told her, the desperation in his voice pure real. I have nowhere to go. Why is that my problem? Because I wouldn't even be here if it wasn't for you. She knew there was truth to that. She thought back to the time that he told her, or more accurately, didn't tell her, that he was working undercover on the Thunderhead's behalf. If she was important enough for the Thunderhead to use Grison to circumnavigate Scythe State separation, shouldn't she at least help him out of this corner? The Scythom is after me, the Authority Interface is after me, and whoever was behind this attack is now my enemy too. You seem to be very good at making enemies. Yeah, and you're the closest thing I have to a friend. Finally, Setter put aside her disappointment. She couldn't let him twist in the wind on her behalf. What would you like me to do? I don't know. Grison began pacing in the small place, his impossibly black hair wiping wildly in the wind, and for a moment, Citra had the image of walls closing in around him. He really did have no way out. Nothing she could say to Constantine would help. He was ready to clean Grison piece by bloody piece. And even if she interceded for him, it wouldn't matter. The Scythom needed a scapegoat. I can give you immunity, she said, but once your DNA is transmitted to the Scythom's database, they'll know exactly where you are. And, he added, I'm sure they'll figure out whose ring I kissed. He shook his head. I don't want to get you into trouble. That made her laugh. You were on a team that was trying to end me, but you don't want to get me into trouble? I wasn't really on the team, he insisted. You know that. Yes, she did know it. Others would say that he just lost his nerve, but she knew the truth, and was probably the only one who did. But even though she wanted to help him out of this, she was drawing a blank. Are you telling me that the wise and beautiful Scythe Anastasia has no ideas? He said. From anyone else, Cetra would have seen it as false flattery, but he wasn't the flattering type. He was too desperate to be anything but sincere. She didn't feel wise or beautiful at the moment, but she allowed him his fantasy of the honorable Scythe Anastasia. And then she rose to the occasion, because something occurred to her. I know where you can go. He looked at her with those dark, imploring eyes, waiting for her to impart an ounce of her wisdom. There's a Tony's monastery here in town. They'll hide you from the Scythom. He was, to say the least, underwhelmed. Tony's? He said in horror. Are you serious? They'll cut my tongue out. No, they won't, she told him, but they do hate the Scythom, and I'm pretty sure they'd protect you with their own lives rather than hand you over to them. Ask for Brother MacLeod. Tell him I sent you. But you wanted my help, and I gave it, she said. What you do now is entirely up to you. Then she left him, getting back to the hotel just in time to change back into her robe without being seen, and grant immunity to the grieving family of the clean actor. To be clear, not every act I take is perfect. People confuse a state of being with a set of actions. I will try to explain the difference here. I, the Thunderhead, am perfect. This is true by definition, and there is no need to refute it because it is fact. Every day, however, I must make many billions of decisions and take billions of actions. Some of them are small, like turning off a light when no one is present in the room, in order to conserve electricity. Other decisions are major, like inducing a minor earthquake to prevent a larger one, but none of those acts is perfect. I could have turned off that light sooner, thereby conserving more energy. I could have made the earthquake 1 degree smaller. and saved a handcrafted vase from shattering on the floor. I have come to realize that there are only two perfect acts. They are the two most important acts known to me, but I forbid myself to perform them and leave them in the hands of humankind. They are the creation of life and life's taking, the Thunderhead. Chapter 28. That which comes. Like most Tony's compounds, the one where Grison Tolliver found himself was styled to look much older than it was. In this case, it was built of brick and had ivy-covered walls, but it being winter, the vines were cold and bare, looking more like spider webs. He entered through a long, trellised colonnade lined with skeletal rose bushes. It all must have been very beautiful in the spring and summer, but now, in the dead of winter, it looked like he felt. The first person he saw was a woman in a tawny sackcloth frock who offered him a smile and upturned palms as a greeting. "I need to talk to Brother MacLeod," he said, remembering what Scythe Anastasia had told him. "You'll have to get permission from Curate Mendoza," she responded. "I'll go retrieve him." Then she sauntered off at such a leisurely pace. Grayson wanted to grab her and push her along. When Curate Mendoza arrived, he, at least, walked as if there were some sense of urgency. "I'm here for sanctuary," Grayson told him. "I was told to ask for Brother MacLeod." "Yes, of course," he said, as if this were something he addressed on a regular basis. He then escorted Grayson into one of the buildings of the compound, into a bedroom. There was a lit candle on a nightstand. The first thing the curate did was snuff it out with a dozer. "Make yourself comfortable," he said. "I'll let Brother MacLeod know you're waiting for him." Then the curate closed the door but didn't lock it, leaving Grayson with his own thoughts and a way out if he wanted one. The room was austere. No creature comforts beyond what was necessary. There was a bed, a chair, and a nightstand. There were no decorations on the walls, except for an iron tuning fork above the headboard, its prongs pointing upward. A vidant, they called it, the symbol of their faith. In the nightstand drawer was a sackcloth outfit, and a pair of sandals was on the floor. Beside the dust candle was a leather hymnal with the vidant embossed on the cover. It was peaceful. It was calming. It was unbearable. He had gone from the uneventful world of Grayson Tolliver to the tumultuous extremes of Slade Bridger, and now he was cast into the belly of bluntness, doomed to be digested by boredom. "Well, at least I'm still alive," he thought, although he wasn't entirely sure that was a benefit. Purity had been gleaned. Not supplanted, not relocated, but gleaned. She was no more, and in spite of the horrors he had attempted, he ached for her. He longed to hear her defiant voice. He had become addicted to her chaos. He would have to adjust to a life without her, as well as a life without himself, for who was he now? He lay down on the bed, which, at least, was comfortable, and waited for perhaps half an hour. He wondered if Tony's, like the Office of Unsavory Affairs, made everyone wait as a matter of policy. Finally, he heard the creak of the door. It was late afternoon now, and the light from the small window lit the room just enough for him to see that the man before him wasn't much older than he. He also had some sort of hard casing on one of his arms. "I'm Brother MacLeod," he said. "The curate has accepted your request for sanctuary. I understand you asked for me personally." "A friend of mine told me to. May I ask who?" "No, you may not." He seemed a bit annoyed, but let it go. "May I at least see your ID?" And when Grayson hesitated, Brother MacLeod said, "Don't worry. No matter who you are or what you've done, we won't turn you over to the authority interface." "I'm sure it already knows I'm here." "Yes," agreed Brother MacLeod, "but your presence here is a matter of religious freedom. The Thunderhead will not interfere." Grayson reached into his pocket and handed him his electronic card, still flashing with the bright red hue. "Unsavory," he said. "We get more and more unsavories these days. Well, Slate, That won't matter here. That's not my name. Brother MacLeod gave him a question look. Is that something else you want to talk about? No, it's just not worth the effort. Then, what do we call you? Grison Tolliver. All right then. Brother Tolliver it is? Grison supposed he'd have to live with being called Brother Tolliver now. What's that thing on your arm? It's called a cast. So, am I going to have to wear one? Brother MacLeod laughed. Not unless you break your arm. Excuse me? It's to help aid the natural healing process. With some nanites, and unfortunately, my arm was broken by a scythe. Really? Grison actually grinned, wondering if it was scythe anesthesia. Brother MacLeod didn't appreciate Grison's grin. His demeanor cooled slightly. We have afternoon intoning in 10 minutes. There are clothes for you in the drawer. I'll wait outside while you change. Do I have to go? Grison asked. Intoning didn't sound like something he really wanted to be a part of. Yes, said Brother MacLeod. That which comes can be avoided. Intoning took place in a chapel that, after the candlelight was tossed, had barely enough light to allow Grison to see, in spite of the high stained glass windows. Do you do everything in the dark? Grison asked. Eyes can be deceiving. We appreciate the other senses more. There was the sweet smell of incense converting something full that Grison soon learned was a basin of filthy water. Primordial was, Brother MacLeod called it. It's filled with all the diseases that we've become immune to. Intoning consisted of the curate striking the huge steel tuning fork in the center, 12 times in succession with a mallet. The congregation, which seemed to number about 50, matched the tone. With each strike of the fork, the vibration built and resonated to the point of being not quite painful, but disorienting and dizzying. Grison did not open his mouth to vocalize the tone. The curate gave a short speech, a sermon, Brother MacLeod called it. He spoke of his many journeys through the world in search of the Great Fork. The fact that we have not found it does not mean the search is a failure, for the search itself is every bit as valuable as the finding. The congregation hummed their agreement. Whether we find it today or tomorrow, or whether it is our sect or another that finds it, I believe to my very core that we will, one day, hear and feel the great resonance, and it will save us all. Then, when the sermon was over, the congregation rose and approached the curate in a line. Each one dipped a finger into the rancid primordial was, touched it to their forehead, and licked it off their finger. Grison became nauseated just watching. You don't have to partake of the early bowl yet, Brother MacLeod told him, which was only partially reassuring. Yet? How about not at all? To which Brother MacLeod once more said, That which counts can be avoided. That night, the wind howled with unusual ferocity, and sleet hissed as it pummeled the little window in Grison's room. The Thunderhead could influence the weather, but not entirely change it. Or, if it could, it chose not to. It did try to make sure that when storms came, at least they came at more convenient times. He tried to convince himself that this storm was the Thunderhead crying icy tears for him. But who was he kidding? The Thunderhead had millions of more important things to do than lament his troubles. He was safe. He was protected. What more could he ask for? Everything. Curate Mendoza came into his room that night at about 9 or 10. Light spilled in from the hallway, but once he was inside, he closed the door, leaving them both in darkness again. Grison heard the complaint of the chair as the curate sat in it. I came to see how you're getting on, he said. I'm fine. Adequacy is all that can be expected at this juncture, I suppose. Then his face was illuminated with the harsh light of a tablet. The curate tapped and swept. I thought you sent electricity. Not at all, the curate told him. We send light in our ceremonies, and our sleeping quarters are dark to encourage our members to leave their rooms and seek communion with others in our public spaces. Then he turned the tablet so Grison could see it. It showed images of the burning theater. Grison tried not to grimace. This happened 2 days ago. It is my suspicion that you were involved and that the Scythedom is after you. Grison neither confirmed nor denied the charge. If that is the case, the curate said, you need not mention it. You are safe here, because any enemy of the Scythedom is a friend of ours. So, you condone violence? We condone resistance to a natural death. Scythes are bringers of a natural death, so anything that frustrates their blades and bullets is fine with us. Then he reached out and touched one of the horn-like bumps on Grison's head. Grison backed away at his touch. Those will have to be removed, he said. We do not allow body modifications, and your head will be saved to allow your hair to grow in the color the universe intended. Grison said nothing. Now that Purity was dead, he wasn't going to miss being Slade Bridger, because it just reminded him of her, but he did not like having no choice in the matter. Mendoza rose. I do hope you'll come out to the library or one of the recreation rooms and get to know your fellow Tonists. I know they'd like to get to know you better, especially Sister Piper, who greeted you when you arrived. I just lost someone close to me. I don't feel like being social. Then you must, especially if your loved one was lost to Glenning. We Tonists don't acknowledge death by scythe, which means you are not allowed to mourn. So now he was being told what he was and was not allowed to feel? He wanted the last bit of Slade Bridger that was still in him to tell the curate to go to hell, but instead he just said, I won't pretend to understand your ways. But you will pretend, said Mendoza. If you wish to have sanctuary, you will find your new purpose among us, and pretend until our ways become yours. And if they never do, then you'll just have to keep on pretending, the curate said. Then he added, it has certainly worked for me. 620 miles due south of Wichita, Rowan Demisk sparred with Tyger Salazar. Under different circumstances, it would have been enjoyable for Rowan, competing with a friend in a martial art he'd come to love, but these forced confrontations toward an unknown end left Rowan increasingly unsettled. They sparred twice a day for 2 weeks, and although Tyger got better with each match, Rowan always won. When they weren't sparring, Rowan was consigned to his room. Tyger, on the other hand, found himself even busier than before Rowan had arrived. More exhausting runs, more resistance training, repetitive pocator drills, as well as maneuvers with every kind of blade from sword to dagger, until each one felt like a perfect extension of himself. Then, at the end of each day, just as his muscles were feeling the whir of his efforts, Tyger would receive a deep tissue massage to make his knotted flesh supple. Before Rowan arrived, the massages were maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but now he had them every day, and he was so exhausted that he often fell asleep on the table. I'll beat him, he told Scythrant. You'll see. I have no doubt, she said. For someone who, according to Rowan, was deceptive and heartless, she seemed pretty sincere. It was during one of his massages that the Emerald Scythe came in and asked the masseurs to leave. Tyger thought she might take over. He thrilled at the idea of her hunting him, but to his disappointment, she didn't touch him at all. She simply said, It's time. Time for what? For you to get your ring. She seemed melancholy about it somehow. Tyger thought he knew why. I know you didn't want to give it to me until after I beat Rowan. Couldn't be helped, she said. He got up and slipped his robe on, showing not the slightest bit of modesty before her. Why should he? There was nothing about himself that he wanted hidden from her, inside or out. You could have been a model for Michelangelo. I'd have liked that, he said, trying his robe. To be chiseled in marble. She moved toward him, leaned in, and gave him the lightest of kisses, so light he could barely feel her lips touch his. He thought it might be a prelude to something more, but she backed away. We have an appointment early tomorrow. Get a good night's sleep. What do you mean? What kind of appointment? She offered him a smile, albeit a slim one. You can receive your scythe ring without at least a little bit of ceremony. Will Rowan be there? Tyger asked. Best if he's not. She was right, of course. There was no need to rub Rowan's nose in the fact that he hadn't been chosen. But Tyger had meant what he had said. The moment he had the ring, he'd give Rowan immunity. I hope, Tyger said, that once that ring is on my finger, you look at me a little bit differently. She took a long look into his eyes, and that did more to melt his muscles than the grinding knuckles of the masseurs. I'm sure things will be different, she told him. Be up and ready to go by 7 o'clock sharp. After she had left, he allowed himself a moment to breathe a contented sigh. In a world where everyone was guaranteed to get whatever they needed, not everyone got everything they wanted. Rowan sure hadn't, and until recently, Tyger hadn't even known that he wanted to be a scythe. But now that it was about to happen, he knew it was right, and for the first time he could remember, was intensely pleased with the direction in which his life was moving. Rowan was not brought out for sparring the next day, or the day after that. His only visitors were the guards who brought his food and took away his tray when he was done. He had counted the days since he arrived. The old-time holidays had come and gone with no celebration in the penthouse. It was the last week of the year. He didn't even know what the new year was to be called. Year of the Raptor, one of the guards told him when he asked, and hoping the guard might have warmed enough to spill some information, he asked, What's going on? Why haven't Tyger and Scythe dragged me out for sparring? Don't tell me I'm not their vocator bitch anymore. But if the guard knew the answer, he wasn't saying. Just it, he said. We've been given strict orders not to let you starve. Late in the afternoon of that second day of solitude, Scythe came in with both guards. Vacation must be over, Rowan quipped, but the Emerald Scythe was not up for banter today. Put him in the chair, she ordered the guards. I don't want him to be able to move an inch. And then Rowan caught sight of a roll of duct tape. To be tied to a chair was one thing, to be duct tape was worse. This is it, thought Rowan. Tyger's training is over, and whatever she's going to do to me, it's happening now. So Rowan made his move. As soon as the guards tried to grab him, he exploded in a series of brutal blows that left one of their jaws broken, and the other one on the ground desperately gasping for air. But before he could break for the door, Rand was on him, and had him pinned, his back to the floor, and a knee against his chest with such pressure it was impossible for him to draw a breath. You will submit to the bondage, or I will knock you out and you'll be bound anyway, she told him. But if it goes that way, I'll make sure your teeth get broken again. Then, when he was on the verge of losing consciousness, she took her knee off his chest. He was weakened just enough to make it easier for them to secure him to the chair, and that's where they left him for over an hour. The tape was worse than the rope they had used on him inside Bram's home. It constricted his chest so he could breathe only in shallow puffs. His arms and legs had no play whatsoever, no matter how much he tried to work his way out of the tape. The sun set, leaving nothing but the city lights of San Antonio, and the pale glow of a rising gibbous moon, which lit the room in dim blues and long shadows. Finally, the door opened, and one of the guards rolled in someone who was seated in some sort of chair with wheels on either side. Scythe came in behind them. Hi, Rowan. It was Tyger. He was silhouetted against the light coming in from the hallway, so Rowan couldn't see his face, but he recognized the voice. He sounded tired and raspy. What's going on, Tyger? Why did Rand do this to me? And what the hell is that you're sitting in? It's called a wheelchair, he said, choosing only to answer the third question. It's from the age of mortality. Not much need for it these days, but it came in useful today. There was something odd about the way Tyger spoke. Not just the raspy tone of his voice, but the cadence of his speech, his choice of words, and the way he enunciated them so clearly. Tyger shifted a hand, and something on it caught the moonlight. Rowan didn't need to be told what it was. You got your ring? Yes, Tyger said. Yes, I did. There was a feeling in Rowan's gut now, heavy and putrid. It was trying to work its way up to the surface. A part of Rowan already knew what it was, but he wasn't willing to let it seep into his awareness, as if refusing to think about it could chase away a dark spectre of truth. But illumination was only a moment away.
Ain, I can't quite reach the light switch. Could you get it?
She reached over, turned on the light, and the reality of the situation hit Rowan with both barrels. Because although it was Tyger Salazar sitting in the wheelchair, it wasn't Tyger who Rowan found himself looking at. He was looking at the smiling face of Scythe Goddard.
I can communicate in 6,909 living and dead languages. I can have more than 15 billion simultaneous conversations and be fully engaged in every single one. I can be eloquent and charming, funny and endearing, speaking the words you most need to hear at the exact moment you need to hear them. Yet, even so, there are unthinkable moments where I can find no words in any language, living or dead. And in those moments, if I had a mouth, I might open it to scream.
The Thunderhead. Chapter 29. Report Post. Rowan felt the world spin. He could breathe out, but couldn't breathe in, as if Scythe Rand's knee was on his chest again, as if the room were floating in space, and he longed for the ecstasy of unconsciousness, because that was a better alternative than what he now faced.
Yes, I can see how the boys would have confused you,
Goddard said, still sounding like Tyger.
It couldn't be helped.
How was all Rowan could get out? While Rand's survival had been a shock, at least it made sense. But Rowan had decapitated Goddard. He had seen the man's headless body burn. But now Rowan looked to Rand, who stood there in obedience to her mentor, and Rowan knew, oh God, he knew.
You managed to decapitate me right at the jawline,
Goddard said.
Above the larynx, thus my old vocal cords are gone forever, but this will do.
And what made it even worse was that Goddard wasn't wearing a Scythe's robe. He was wearing Tyger's clothes, all the way down to his shoes. It was intentional, Rowan realized, so there would be no doubt in Rowan's mind what had been done. Rowan turned away.
No, you must look,
Goddard said.
I insist.
The guard went behind Rowan, grabbed his head, and forced him to face the man in the wheelchair. How could you do this? Rowan hissed.
Me? Heavens, no,
he told Rowan.
It was all Ain's idea. I couldn't do much of anything. She had the presence of mind to rescue the critical part of me from the burning cloister, and I am told that I was senseless for nearly a year, blissfully on ice. Believe me, if this had been my doing, it would have been different. It would be your body to which my head would now be attached.
Rowan could not hide his anguish. His tears flowed with fury and unimaginable sorrow. They could have chosen anyone for this, but they hadn't. They chose Tyger, for the sole reason that he was Rowan's friend. You sick bastards!
Sick? Said Goddard. I wasn't the one who beheaded his mentor's scythe and turned against his comrades. What you did, and what you've been doing during my Nitrogen slumber, is unforgivable by scythe law. Ain and I, on the other hand, have broken no laws. Your friend Tyger was cleaned, and then his body was repurposed. Simple as that. It may be unorthodox, but under the circumstances it is entirely understandable. What you see before you is nothing more and nothing less than the consequence of your own actions.
Rowan watched Tyger's chest rise and fall with Goddard's breathing. His hands rested limply on the arms of the wheelchair. It seemed a chore for him to move them.
This sort of procedure is, of course, much more delicate than simple speed healing,
Goddard said.
It will take a few more days until I have full control of your friend's body.
Then he struggled to raise his hand, regarding it as he flexed his fingers into a fist.
Look at that progress. I look forward to the day that I can take you on, Invocator. I understand you've already been helping to train me.
Training? It all made a twisted sort of sense now. The sparring, the attention to Tyger's physique, even the massages, like Kobe beef being prepared for slaughter. But there was one question left. something Rowan did not want to ask, but he felt he owed it to Tyger. What did you do to... Rowan couldn't even bring himself to say the word. To the rest of him? Rand shrugged, as if it were nothing.
You said it yourself. Tyger wasn't much in the brains department. Everything above the neck was expendable.
Where is he? Rand didn't answer the question, so Goddard did.
Thrown out with the rest of the garbage,
he said, with a dismissive wave of Tyger's hand. Rowan lunged forward, forgetting his sponge, but his fury did little more than rock the chair. If he could ever get free from his chair, he would kill them. Not just clean them, but kill them. Rip them limb from limb with such blatant bias and malice aforethought it would incinerate the second commandment. And this was what Goddard wanted. He wanted Rowan to be consumed by murderous rage, yet be powerless to use it, impotent to avenge his friend's terrible fate. Goddard soaked up Rowan's misery as if nourished by it.
Would you have given yourself to save him?
Goddard asked. Yes, Rowan screamed. Yes, I would have. Why didn't you take me?
Said
Goddard, as if it were merely a minor revelation.
In that case, I'm glad for the choice I made. Because after what you did to me, you must be made to suffer, Rowan. I am the aggrieved party here, so it is my wishes that must be honored, and it is my wish that you live in abject misery. It's fitting that this began in fire, because you, Rowan, now suffer the fate of the mythical Prometheus, the bringer of fire, not all that different from Lucifer, the bearer of light, from whom you took your side name. Prometheus was chained to the face of a mountain for his indiscretion, doomed to have his liver devoured by eagles until the end of time.
Then he rolled closer and whispered,
I am your eagle, Rowan, and I will feed on your misery day after day for eternity, or until your suffering bores me.
Goddard held his gaze for a moment more, then had the guard roll him out. Over the past 2 years, Rowan had been physically beaten, psychologically flayed, and emotionally battered, but he had survived it. What hadn't killed him had made him stronger, more resolved to do what was necessary to fix what was broken, but now it was he who was broken, and there weren't enough nanites in the world to repair the damage. When he looked up, he saw that Scythe Rand was still there. She made no move to cut his bonds. He didn't expect her to. How could the eagle devour his insides if he were cut free? Well, the joke was on them. He didn't have anything left inside to devour, and if he did, it was pure poison. Get out, he told Rand, but she didn't go. She stood there in her bright green robe, a color that Rowan had come to despise. He didn't go out with the garbage, sighed Rand said. I took care of it myself, then spread his ashes in a field of wild blue bonnets. Just saying. Then she left, leaving Rowan to find what solace he could from the lesser of two horrors.